Okay, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, and we'd like to call to order the Cabarrus County Schools Board of Education meeting for Monday, May 7th. And board members, you've had your agenda in front of you since last week on board docs, and it's a quite lengthy agenda tonight. But do I have a motion that we accept the agenda as presented? I have a motion. Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, at this time, we would like to ask Senator Howard Lee and Dr. Kirk to come to the podium, and they're going to give us a report on the Howard Lee Institute for Equity and Opportunity in Education. So if you gentlemen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Board Chair, distinguished members of the board, Dr. Shepard. It's a great honor tonight to introduce Senator Lee, who will be with us here shortly to talk a little bit about the Howard Lee Institute. Senator Lee's first foray into public life began when he was elected mayor of Chapel Hill. After this, he was appointed Secretary of Natural Resources and served with Governor Hunt for 4 years. Next came the North Carolina Senate, where he served 13 years with heavy focus on education in his many roles in the Senate. After leaving the Senate, he was appointed to the State Board of Education and served as its chairman for 4 years. Last October, Senator Lee left public office as executive director of the Education Cabinet for what he believes is the last time to open the Howard and Lee Institute. He is now focused on giving back or paying forward, as he often says, in education, and so his work is just beginning even at his young age. The Lee Institute is based in Raleigh and is committed to transforming young lives through collaboration and coordination by forming partnerships with organizations and institutions committed to helping at-risk students overcome adverse circumstances and graduate from high school ready for a career or college education. Senator Lee.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kirk. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, what an honor it is for me to appear before you this evening to share with you a vision that I've had for quite a long time, one which I've discussed in detail with the superintendent and had the privilege of also interacting early on with the chair and the vice chair in preparation for this meeting this evening. I've been told I have 10 minutes. If I go beyond that, I'm going to have a protest. So I will certainly try to be a good steward of that amount of time. I left the governor's office in September and have been committing myself full-time since then, developing the Howard N. Lee Institute for Equity and Opportunity. One of the concerns I've had for a long time, and one which I've wanted to focus on trying to improve, is the relationship between the community and the local school systems. One of the great concerns is that I have grown tired of people criticizing the schools, but not really focusing in a coordinated and unified way to try and engage in support of and engage with the public schools. So it is my hope that we will be able to come into communities and create an attitude of collaboration by organizing stakeholders into partnerships that can be supportive. And my vision is that motivated teachers and principals, supportive and encouraging parents, engaged and productive citizens can create a thriving and healthy education community. And there are 5 keys that we will focus on, which we think are important. One is the community, and the community consists of parents and business leaders and faith-based leaders and that long list of nonprofits. Talent consists of the leadership in our schools, the principals and people who have visions. Time is that which we will use both in and out of the school to focus on outcomes for students. Technology are the tools that we believe are important to be engaged with students. But the basic ultimate importance is the evaluation of what we do in terms of making sure that if we say we're going to achieve certain outcomes, those outcomes are indeed achieved. The Institute does plan to hold a series of meetings and forums and workshops on the way to building up this relationship with the community. Now, we're not reinventing the wheel. There are a number of models that we have looked at that are in place across the country. Strive Networks, for example, out of Cincinnati, has done a wonderful job in building up that kind of relationship there, and it's paying great dividends in terms of school performance. Strive's imprint has recently been felt in Guilford County, in Greensboro. There has been created something called Achieve Guilford. You can go to the website and see what they're doing. Charlotte Mecklenburg is putting in something called Project Lift. They have a lot more money than we can bring to Cabarrus, of course, but it's going to be a successful project, and we have just been collaborating with New Hanover County, which has put in place something called their Blue Ribbon Commission, which is inclusive of all the stakeholders that I mentioned earlier. We want to create something called the Education Leadership Alliance. Now, it may be called something else in Cabarrus. We just use that as a generic title for the work of the Institute, Education Leadership Alliance. In Cabarrus, depending on how we discuss it and what we put in place, it could be called Cabarrus Success or Cabarrus Lift or something of that sort, but it would include the same core members: business leaders, faith-based leaders, parents, and community organizers, healthcare leaders, all coming together and developing a strategy that would set goals that everybody can coalesce around and unify in support of, and sustain this momentum and this process to the ultimate outcomes. We can identify best practices from around the country, and I have some interest of initiatives that we think would be important to put in place. A parent advocate, for example. I've watched parents who struggle with what can their role be in the lives of their children. And what I'd like to do is to put a process in place where we identify parents who can be advocates for other parents and bring those parents together and engage in training them on how to be supportive of their kids without having to feel the pressure of learning all the content that their kids learn. Early childhood literacy. I am a big believer that if we don't do a much better job in training kids how to read and keeping them on grade level, that those kids don't have a chance beyond the third grade of going ahead and being successful. And then Career Prep Academy, which will, the Scholars Career Prep Academy would be set in middle school to focus specifically on males, because if there is one group that is in crisis in our schools, it's males, especially minority males, and we want to make sure that we focus on them. And then a scholars program. This is for those high-achieving students who really want to go to college, and this would be at the high school. And the goal would be that any kids who participate in the scholars program would be guaranteed a seat in college and would have a financial package waiting for them when they finish their work. It would start in the 9th grade with a 2.5 GPA, but it would also require that in order to maintain involvement in the scholars program, a youngster would have to maintain a 3.0 minimum GPA, and it would have a number of perks that would go along with it. For example, one thought we have is that we could convince community people to adopt students. And adopt a student means that you could mentor that student, you could provide financial support to that student, you could tutor that student, but you could really be a support for that student. Then there's endow a student. Some people who have resources, many of my peers, could endow a student and ensure that the financial resources are there to support that student. I made a speech a week ago last Friday at Elon University where they had a group together, and I made that passionate plea about how people my age should be paying forward and how they could endow a student. And one man stood up and said, "I'm prepared to endow a student tonight," which he did. Now, I don't know if it was the speech or the Spirit just moved him, whichever. I'll take credit for it. We will have partnerships with colleges and universities. I've already had interaction and commitments from several of our major universities that really are willing to sign on and participate. And then, of course, technology, visual connections, making sure that we capitalize on the fact that every kid is walking the street today with a smartphone. No matter how poor they are, they still have a smartphone. So we can capitalize on that, and we hope through the Institute to come up with ways in which we can do that. I've had wonderful conversation with the superintendent, and I know what his vision is. Our goal is to come into the community, not substitute our vision, but listen to the vision of the leadership of the community and find ways to make sure that kids who are in trying, challenging circumstances are given an opportunity through the support that we can bring into the community and through the community itself have a chance to go on and be successful. The superintendent has shared with me he wants this system to be a top 10 system in the state. He also wants it to be a top 100 system in the nation. And let me commend you, members of the board. Cabarrus County has done a wonderful job in terms of knowing where it wants to go and how it can get there. I'm extremely pleased. We didn't come here without being invited first to come and have conversations with the superintendent. I am not going anywhere I am not wanted. I got too much to do, and too many people are calling, asking me to come, to go into an area where there's resistance. And I'm so impressed with what I've found since being here, that while you're not there yet, and I remember when I was a little kid, and my dad would be driving a car, and we'd be out there on the road for so long, and then finally I'd say, "Dad, are we there yet?" And he'd say, "No, but we'll get there sooner or later." Well, I know you want to get there sooner than later, and we are delighted that if we can be some help. So our next steps, if we go forward, is to sit with the superintendent, who will make the determination as to where we focus our initial efforts in Cabarrus County. Following that, we will then determine how to pull together the stakeholders that I identified for you at the beginning of my presentation, how to get them in the same room. There is no shortage of organizations in Cabarrus County who think they're doing good in support of education, but they can't prove it. And my philosophy is that we're not asking for contributions, we're asking for investments, and you should expect a return, whether it's investment of time or investment of hard resources. I want these folk in the same room and to be able to say to them, you've got to stop focusing on your little piece of the puzzle. You have got to put your piece of the puzzle in place, and let's see what kind of picture we can draw together in support of the initiatives, both of the superintendent and of this board. So I think we'll have that meeting, and then in whatever area, because we're not going to try to take on the county all at once, and we won't try to introduce all of these initiatives all at once. We will then focus more specifically on how we can launch an initiative in the specific area that the superintendent has identified. Well, there's much more to say. I really would like to have an opportunity for you to share your thoughts, ask your questions, and have some interchange of possibilities going forward. I think it's an exciting time to be here, to be in education, and to have a vision similar to what you have. And we find these visions all over, but we think the community has to be engaged in a way that is extremely supportive and productive, and they too can see the same vision that you have. Mr. Chairman, that's the presentation. I'm happy to respond or interact in any way with members of the board.
Thank you so much, Senator Lee, not only for your presentation, but just for being here. We're honored that you're here and honored for the vision that you have. And at this time, I'd like to ask our board members if you have questions, concerns, comments that you'd like to ask Senator Lee, reference his initiative here that he's wanting to bring to Cabarrus County. I feel very fortunate that we're one of 5 LEAs in North Carolina that's being looked at. So if you have questions, concerns, Senator Lee's here for you. We'll just go around. If you have it, I mean, not everybody has comments, and so if you have any comments?
Just kind of echo what you said. We appreciate you coming and spending time with us and explaining this to us. And it's quite obvious that our superintendent and this board has the same visions that you have. But in honor of our school board member that is on vacation, I have to ask the question that she would ask, and cost. How is it going to be structured? I mean, do we share in the cost of this thing, or how's this work?
There will be some sharing in the cost. It could be in kind, and it could be in cash. There are a number of ways to structure that kind of contribution. The other is we are looking to raise funds outside of the county through foundations and through interactions. We've had the privilege of meeting with Ms. Manette and talking with her about trying to strongly engage the community foundation as a conduit through which we can both funnel money as well as generate resources from in the community. I'm convinced there are some resources in the community that we can generate as long as we have a reasonable project, a strong proposal, and we have it done in such a way that anybody investing in this initiative can see the return on an investment in several ways. One, in terms of outcome. What difference did it make in the life of a student? Two, what difference did it make in the life of the school in which we are working? And three, how will it sustain and impact students who are coming up through the later grades as well?
Okay, Tim, you finished?
Yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, that's good information, and that's what I think we're always kind of want to do, is make sure when we, look at these new projects and things like that, that we get a return for our investment. And I think a lot of times in the past, we're not really sure.
That's
Maybe
right.
2 or 3 years down the road, we don't have a clue if what we did was the right thing to do. So
One
it
of our
sounds
par-
like you got the right plan.
One of our partner organizations is a company out of Raleigh called EdStar Analytics that has a long history. They are the ones that evaluated the dropout programs in the state. They are partnering with us and will evaluate everything we do and everything we say we're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Furr. Ms. Fartenbrough?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Lee, we actually met previously. I've been on beta since the beginning and on e-learning currently.
Oh, yes, right.
So we've actually met before. Is this program really we use our current curriculum, but this is enrichment? Or are the students actually pulled out of the regular classroom setting?
We don't expect any students to be pulled out. That my goal is to
Okay.
be supplementary to what is going on and to provide additional actions and opportunities in support of students. For example, the scholars students, we hope we could provide an opportunity for them to go abroad and study at a certain point in their journey along the way. We would arrange opportunities for some of these youngsters to show up on a college or university campus. And I think of my own life when I had never set foot on a college campus before I got there. And we are finding that looking at the work at Elon University, that kids are coming on the college campus, and for the first time, they really are starting to believe, I can really be here. So ours is to facilitate, supplement opportunities, and to engage people to be supportive of these youngsters. So the class work continues on, but we will look at the data on the student performance and the student proficiency to see if we can both increase as well as maintain the successful high performance.
Okay. Is this limited to minorities or to anyone who would be considered at risk?
It's open to any
Okay.
student. Let me tell you how I define minority. It's defined based on economics.
Okay.
Because any kid who is disadvantaged or who lives in challenging circumstances, regardless of their ethnicity or gender, I believe deserves the same opportunity to have access to these kinds of opportunities. And so we'll be looking at kids. We'll work closely with the principals of the schools in which the superintendent says we should focus. We'll work closely with the superintendent. And we'll work very, very closely with guidance counselors in these schools because they probably know the students as well as anybody to select students. And one other point, no student, we would not expect any student to be assigned to this. Students will be invited. They can choose to come or they can choose not to come. But we'll make the water available to them. It's up to them to decide if they really want to drink.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I have several questions. Is there kind of a, almost like a discipline expectation component as well? Because you mentioned about the GPA, but from a standpoint of, not to say a student who has a history of maybe suspensions and tardies and those sorts of things would not be eligible, but do you have a certain expectation to stay in the program?
We do. There's a very strong expectation. For example, when I was first putting this thought together on the Scholars Program, my staff challenged me because I said I will accept nobody with a tattoo or an earring. And the staff said, you're too conservative. You need to. I've said now that I will accept a tattoo as long as I can't see it. I'm still struggling with the earring. But yeah, there will be expectations, be high standards for the scholars. There may be a different set of standards for the Career Prep Academy, but there will be standards, there will be expectations, and students will be expected to conform to all of these expectations that we put in place. And if they don't, then they can't be a part of what we're trying to do. We want kids who are serious about trying to shape their lives and control their destinies and be successful. I'm too old to mess around with kids who want to play. I don't have that many years in front of me, and I'd like to see some results before I have to check out.
Well, I hope that's a very long time till checkout. But Dr. Shepard, do you already have in mind what you might replace or augment with this kind of a program? Because, you know, we as the board ask frequently when we're posed with something new, how is this different? What do you plan to replace, improve, whatever with it?
I think we need to go back to the very beginning of this idea and understand that we have 4 out of 5 students in our district who are successful in the classroom. This dream is about what can we do together with the Lee Institute to help that 1 in 5 who's not being successful. And so as we begin to engage the community and talk about what those specific needs are, then the program will evolve. Now, the Senator's brought a lot of great ideas to us in the last few months. We'll see which ones fit Cabarrus County and which ones don't. And we'll see where our gaps are, where there's a need for something, and plug that in there. I don't see it as a program where we're going in and working with students during the school day. This is community building, and this is getting students excited about learning and achieving. So it's not something that we would look to replace anything with it. Instead, we would see where we have a need, and we do have serious needs, and we know that. We have students, though we are very successful, we have students who are not succeeding that the Senator can help us with.
Okay, I guess I'd like to see, and just from the integration of the strategic plan and all the things we have going, because all of our initiatives today are not just school day initiatives.
To be a top 10 school district in the state of North Carolina, we're going to have to get every child in our school district engaged in learning, and that's what this is about.
I know, but that's too general for me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm talking about specific things we're doing today, before school, after school, things that tie in from the school day, maybe between the YES centers, those sorts of things. What can be integrated, tied together, so we're not duplicating. The kids aren't feeling like there's a direction from Mrs. Smith in the YES center during the day, and then I go to the special program after school, or I'm engaged in something on the weekend, and there's a slightly different direction. So I'm just thinking about the integration, the flow, that the kids have one message, and that one is supportive of the other, and vice versa.
Let me just say that our intent is not to come in and reinvent the wheel. We will come in and find out what is actually going on. I've had conversations with one community where they already have a very strong dropout program going, but they need help. They don't have a way to expand it, and they can't seem to get people engaged in a way that gives them the broad reach that they feel they need. Our goal is to see what you have first. We'll talk with the superintendent, and where we find the gaps, then we'll try and fill in those gaps. I'm confident you're not doing all that needs to be done, but we are not interested in interrupting or disrupting, but supplementing. I often say the Institute is a facilitator, not an administrative organization.
No, that's fine. And I don't mean to say we're not doing things right or whatever. I just want to see us integrate, like I said, because I think especially in those teen years, the early teens, until they graduate, hopefully they'll graduate, is we have to give a consistent, common message every day from dawn to dusk. And if we're not working with them, and like I said, they're getting just any minor conflict of information, sometimes that's hard to deal with, and they'll just check out on us. So
I agree.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Ms. Blackwelder, you have some questions?
I do. Thank you. I'm going to drill down just a little bit different direction. I was looking at your parent advocate statement, and I would like to have a few more details on that. We've got a lot of programs in place. We've talked about this for years, and I was going to ask you, how are you familiar with the Education Summit that took place with Governor Perdue a couple of years back in Greensboro? I was a part of that. That year I was invited as board chair. So many things came out of that. I was going to read some statistics for the board members that came, because we know that one unsuccessful child is more detrimental to us than the 4 out of the 5 that are. But some of the things that came out of here, and I want to read some of these to you to see if you're familiar with them. Out of that summit came that 30% of our nation's youth drop out and do not finish high school. North Carolina is 12th, and that may have changed today because of the year time. It was in 2010, worst ranked state for dropouts. 65% of the children who have a parent or grandparent go to prison will be incarcerated themselves. High school grads are 8 times less likely to go to jail. High school grads are 7 times likely to own their own home. Graduates are less likely to live in poverty or on public assistance, and 41% of our Latinas are dropping out, and I know that number's not changed. Every one of those, the common factor is the parent.
That's right.
And we've all talked about parent academies, getting the parents, their structural support system at home. If it's not there, the challenge is much greater. So with this situation, how are y'all addressing that? Because that's the component that every supplemental program that we have lacks a real nuts and bolt detail to that.
Well, I think, first of all, you have to start with the parent. We are looking at a number of initiatives that have taken place around the country as well as within our state. Near here, Charlotte put in place something called the Parent University. I haven't looked at it recently, but they did have some success in bringing parents together and giving them the kind of support they need. I began my career at Duke University in 1966 doing research in early childhood education, and one of the things we learned very early is that if you cut a parent out of the child's life, or if the parent begins to feel that he or she can contribute to the child's continued development, they withdraw, and then they start to do things that disrupt the child because they feel they're losing control. I think what we have to do is to bring parents into the fold, start with the stronger parents in the school system, which the counselors and the principal can identify. My thinking is, and we want to test this out, is that if we could come up with resources, train those parents that are dedicated and committed, and then have those parents within that school organize other parents who are not as engaged in small groups, and then we find ways to support them through that process. But we pay these parent advocates to continue to be parent advocates. So that's one approach that we're looking at, and we have other ideas that we want to develop. I won't go on and on because of the time here, but that's why I mentioned to you at the outset that our initial focus is on the community, but our second focus is on how we can enhance the engagement of parents in the lives of their children. And then finally, we have to relieve parents from the burden of thinking they have to master content. They don't need to know math or reading or any of the subject areas. We can take care of that. What parents need to do is to be supportive, to inspire, and to make sure they ask the right questions. I often say to parent groups when I speak to them, you have to be like Confucius. You simply don't have to have the answer, but you do have to ask the right questions. And then finally, no matter what we do, there will be certain parents who will not be engaged with their children. That's where mentors and tutors come in, and we have to recruit people who can be mentors and tutors. I have not gotten all of the data yet, but in this community, there are a lot of retired, intelligent people who could be mentors and who could be tutors to kids. They need something to do. Nothing bothers me more than a retired person who's at home sitting down watching TV and not contributing to the community. But we have to give them a reason and a way in which to be engaged with students, and I think they would appreciate it and the students would love it. So when we can get the parent involved, I will encourage that we look at ways to provide a substitute in lieu of that parent involvement.
Ms. Blackwater, you...
I just want to make actually one more statement that made me think. It's a lot of the things that we've talked about at our retreats for the last couple of years, so this is really good. I was very interested. But I know whatever comes about as far as the details, I would really like to see us focus on those parent
Yes.
advocates, or whatever that portion of it is, because we've realized that in order to break that cycle of events, which is what we're talking about here tonight, and until we do, and get parents to really value education, every one of these programs look kind of the same with just a little bit of difference. So, but thank you very much. It was very good.
We're on the same page, and what I would love to do, I don't know if we'll achieve it, I would love to have parents be as committed to their academic students and be as emotionally connected to them as they are to their athletic students. So that's one of our goals. I don't know whether we'll achieve it or not, but that's the passion I'd like to see in parents as well as in the community.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwelder. Mr. Kiger, you have some questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Lee, thank you very much for being here.
Yes, sir.
I think I'm going to keep my comment just broad-based because my distinguished board members have really asked good, pertinent questions that have allowed you to expand. And to me, whether you're talking about the budget that Mr. First / Ms. Carpenter mentioned, the programs as they already exist, as Ms. Furtenbaugh mentioned, or the parental involvement that Ms. Blackwelder mentioned, to me the key is that evaluation and that ongoing evaluation where you look backwards to see what's working. I've been talking since I decided to try to put forth the effort to sit in this seat that we set the bar high continuously. Let's make sure we set the bar high, and I think Dr. Shepard's doing a tremendous job of that. And I think this, as it comes along and we look at the nuts and bolts that the other three members previous mentioned, as we look into the details of that, to me, in the big picture, that evaluation piece is so key because there's so many times an idea gets started or some program gets going and nobody ever really stops to look backwards to see, well, is it working? We just keep doing it. And that just we just can't afford to do that anymore. And so to me, the key is that you've got that piece in there. We will, as a board and as a system, figure out if this is right for us and if it's something we want to engage in. And I've liked a lot of what I've heard. You absolutely are right. There's a cultural piece that we've got to set the bar with academics. Those parents, whether they were part of the statistics, I'm sorry, I'm tongue-tied, whether they're part of the statistics that Ms. Blackwelder mentioned as being one of those parents, or wherever they come from, they have to understand that academics has to be up here. And all the other stuff's great, but the academic pieces has to be there. And I hope this is something that we can embrace and engage our community in, and we can look backwards and make sure that if we need to change something, let's change it and be open to change. And I understand that you're very open to that. So
Yes, sir.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Minot.
I had the privilege of being invited by Dr. Shepard and some of the members of the Community Education Foundation Board last week to hear Senator Lee, and we were very impressed with everything he had to say, and think that it's definitely, in my opinion, something that we need to investigate a lot farther. Some of the things that I think are essential, because you can't, a lot of the questions you asked go to the specifics, and you can't go to the specifics until you've gone to the overall concept. And so you're still working on the concept, and we were working on the concept in that meeting as to how do you get the community and the schools working together. I mean, the board can want it all at once, Dr. Shepard and the staff can want it all they want, but if you don't have that community support out there, this type of initiative is not going to work. I think that you found that probably in other places. So, in my opinion, I think that the concept is what you need to see if you want to pursue, and then how do you go about getting the community involved? Do you ask representatives from all the different pieces of the community that currently work with children, communities in schools and the learning centers and et cetera, and the Boys and Girls Club and any other entities that have some piece in our children's lives to come together and hear this concept. So everybody has to buy into the concept, and then you can go to the particulars. Which age, what, and that would be more the board's decision and Dr. Shepard's decision as to which children are you going to target first. But you've got to get the community buy-in, I think, first, and just get them to understand this concept. I think it's a wonderful concept because, to me, if you have some students who succeed, other children in their neighborhoods and their associates will see, oh gosh, look what he did. I want to do what he did instead of I want to do what this child down here who's getting in trouble is doing. So I'm really high on the concept, and I'd be willing to help in any way I can. I'm not long for the board, Senator.
Well, we still know where to find you, Ms. Minot.
Yeah, we do, Ms. Bonnet. You can't go far. Senator Lee, as you can see, our board members, as I told you, pretty detailed. They like to ask questions, and I think they asked you some really good questions. But some of the things, most of the things we had already talked about in our meeting. Just for the viewing audience that'll see this in masses, say you got a student, he's got the 2.50. He's really wanting to get a good education. He's really wanting to do a lot better than he has been doing. And then here comes along the Lee Institute that says, hey, I'm willing to help you do better. But for whatever reason, the parents are slackers. You wouldn't want to, I don't think that we would by no means want to discourage that student simply because he don't have the support of his parents. And that's what I wanted you, you touched on it a little while ago, but there'll be lots of people watching this, various means of viewing. And so there might just be that one out there that's feeling like he's lost or she's lost, whatever, and they got a low GPA, and that they say, well, I don't qualify for that because my mom and dad just really don't, get involved in my education. And there's people like that, as you know. So how would you address that just for those people?
Well, just to set the stage, my background and training and my degrees are in social work. I have been working with families and parents, and so I really know how to go in and at least intervene in a parental situation. There has to be an incentive created for that parent, but it has to be done in conjunction with the student. Every parent, regardless of how they respond, in their hearts really want their kids to do well. And but I think there comes a time when you even have to go around the parent and create an incentive for the parent to get out of the way. And there are many ways to create incentives to get parents to back off from their kids. And I've had some success at that through the years in different positions in which I have been engaged. And I could tell you some really success stories of young men who grew up in crackhead families right here in this area, who've gone on to the university, succeeded, and are now very successful. One is a practicing young man who's making six figures at SAS Institute, and he was homeless for a time in this general area right down the road, as a matter of fact. And so that's just one of many I can tell you. That was a youngster who had a mentor who stuck with him through thick and thin, but he also had a family that when he became homeless that took him in. So if you've seen Blind Side, you have seen the life of this young man who went on to be a huge, huge success. So my goal will be first to start with the parent, start with the community, start with the parent, and then we'll figure out how we go from there. But we should not let any outside entity interfere with not letting a kid who's hungry for education to have access to that education. And I know of pockets in this community where the struggles will be tough, the challenges will be high, and the faith that the kids and their parents will have in the system will be questionable. But I'm confident that working with this school system, which I know has in many ways broken some ground and plowed some new areas and exhibited a vision, will work creatively to help make sure that no child is denied access through that process.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator Lee, once again for being here. It's been our pleasure, and we'll look forward to working with you in the future.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and members of the board very much.
Yes,
I'm sorry. I have two more things. One, I wanted to ask if our Teacher of the Year, Janelle, had any comments coming from a school-based, about I'll say enrichment programs and whatnot. And the second thing, Mr. Chair, if we could then follow up with what are the next steps for us? Because we obviously don't have anything to approve. There's no financial impact stated yet and that sort of thing, so.
Anything that offers extra help for students, I'm in big support of. There's definitely a gap and a lack of parent involvement sometimes, so I'm in full support of this and look forward to hearing more about it in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. The next step is that we will continue to have prayer with the superintendent. And after then, I'm sure he'll come back to the board and share with you what his recommendations are for us and what the timetable will be to come into the community and start setting some things in motion. But we're ready to rock and roll, hopefully, when the superintendent is and you as a board are, new members of the board are. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Senator Lee.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, just in honor of Ms. Carpenter not being here, I need to reiterate Mr. Furr's point that we have to know the financial impact. We are not in a position to have any spare change here. So.
Well, as Senator Lee very well said, there's a lot of steps ahead, and unfortunately, there's always a budget and tied up to pretty much anything. And budget is one of the next steps, and all of that will have to be formulated. And I'm sure Senator Lee and Dr. Shepard and all of Senator Lee's staff will be working on that, and they'll bring all this back to us at another time. Remember, this is only in the report section, so we're only receiving this as a report. Okay, board members, we need to move on to 3.2 in our report section, and that's where we have Ms. Kelly Klutz to come to the podium and discuss with us our construction budget. And while Ms. Klutz is getting her stuff together there, don't forget to turn your mic on. I'd like to ask other presenters that sort of be prepared when your time rolls so we can get you up there and get you to doing whatever you got to do for us tonight. Thank you, Ms. Klutz.
All right. On our construction report, the significant changes that you'll find are that we have a significant change in Harold Winkler Middle School. The $1.8 million was reduced from that line item. That's where the county has taken all of the additional funds that weren't used from that project significantly. The contingency and the land, those were dollars we were expecting to be taken from that fund. And then there were some minor changes from Hickory Ridge Middle and the other schools. And those were from the construction account, and those were items that we were expecting. Okay. Are there questions? The budget balance that's left in those accounts, we have some stormwater for the Joyner property and Newsom property, and we also have some announcer booths that we are bidding out that we have those dollars in there right now. But those are the only balances.
Board members, do we have any questions concerning the construction report? Okay, Ms. Blackwelder.
Kelly, this may be a Lynn Wiki question, but I know we had that extension or the time frame that we have to work with to close these out. Are we going to make that with the projects you just talked about?
I know that there is some concern with the announcer booths. We bid those, so I'm not sure about whether we're going to be able to get those in or not. Lee, do you know about those? There is some concern about the announcer booths, but I do not have a definite answer.
If you would, I would ask that we, Lee, I know this is probably throwing you a curve, but we need to figure out what's going to take place. Were they rebid? I think they were rebid.
They were
the
rebid.
Situation?
They rebid twice.
But we need to be very cognizant of that time frame. I'm curious, if we don't make it, what happens?
They were bid, and we did not have enough money even at the second time. So.
Right. Now I'm talking about if that happens again and we're using more time. If it were, my issue is if they do come in under bid or we're able to make that happen, what happens to the time frame if we didn't complete the project during that time frame? I don't think we ever got an answer on that.
Okay. We can get an answer for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Shepard, you have some comments?
I was just going to say that we are definitely going to meet the county's timeline by June 1, and I don't believe at this point that the projects, that those two athletic projects, we're going to be able to get those completed by the June 1 deadline. So there's a possibility, because they're overbid, that we would be returning that money to the county, because we can't use it for another means, and we can't complete this project on time. So, but I know that Mr. Whitkey has been trying hard to get those projects within bid, and he's just been unable to do so. And so I expect that you'll get a report next week saying that those projects we're not going to be able to complete them. I wish we could, but I don't believe we can.
Is this a situation where we can even do one of them? Because, you know, if you think about it, if there's a tournament ball game, Hickory Ridge Middle and High are sitting together, they should be able to go over to the high school ball fields and use them. They have every amenity there. But Winkler is standalone, and elementary schools don't have ball fields. So if we're looking at, instead of giving up both, can we get one finished? And I would go with Winkler because it is by itself.
I think there was a possibility that we could have done that. I don't know that from this point forward by June 1 that we can construct one and complete it and get the bills paid. And so that concerns me, that at this point that I don't know that we can construct anything with that money. And that would be unfortunate to lose that. But I believe that's the reality.
So does it have to be spent by June 1 or just committed by June 1?
Spent. The check actually has to be cut by June
Okay,
1.
but that's only is that the county's rule?
That's the county's. Mhm.
Okay, but I guess what I'm looking at is if we come up with an acceptable, appropriate variation in the next week or so, then I guess to ask the county, can we give you half back or a third of it back, and we'll get one done because that's not a future need at that point. So.
I'd say based on the experience when I was with Mr. Chairman and Mr. Whitkey, when we asked for the June 1 deadline, the answer is going to be no. Whatever, well, so that I think that.
Okay, board members, we have any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Klutz. Okay, the next issue here that we have is going to be 3.3, the monthly QSCB budget update. And as you've noticed, Mr. Whitkey's not with us tonight, and so we've got Mr. Lee Connolly. So Lee, if you'll come onto the podium and you can give us this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, I'm here to report on the QSCB project budget and milestone schedule. I'm going to start with the budget. You'll notice the spreadsheet that's before you and up on the screen here. I want to call your attention to the items that are outlined in blue. Those are projects that were either over budget or they require modifications. So Kelly Klutz is actually going to review in detail the financial implications of those and the changes necessary to move those projects forward. But I wanted to kind of review with you what projects were affected and just a little bit of detail. I'll be very brief with this. There were actually three projects that were affected and will be affected by the budget modifications. Two of them were at Central Cabarrus High School. The first was the office renovation project was underfunded, and we'll be transferring funds from the Central Cabarrus High School window replacement project, as well as the wireless technology project to make up for the shortfall. The other project at Central Cabarrus was the cooling tower and controls project that was underfunded, and we'll be transferring funds from Mount Pleasant Elementary School chillers and controls replacement project to make up for the shortfall there. The third is at Northwest Cabarrus gymnasium project. There are several projects that we're transferring funds into that to make up for the shortfall on that project. I don't know how much detail you want me to get into, but those are basically the three major projects that are affected, and the numbers that are in blue here represent the areas that are going to be changed, and Kelly Klutz will review the financial details on that. But if there are any questions about the specific projects that you want to ask me, I'd like to open the floor right now.
Board members, do you have any questions at this time to Mr. Connolly? We'll start on Ms. Monett's side if you have questions. No questions, Mr. Kiger? No questions, Ms. Blackwelder, Ms. Furtenbaugh, Mr. Furr? Well, you got off light on that, Mr.
Okay.
Connolly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to move on then, if we could, to the milestone schedule. Thank you. Appreciate it. There's a lot of information on this spreadsheet. I'm going to be as brief as I can. I'd like to highlight several areas: completed projects, projects to complete by the time school ends, projects to begin in May, and then projects to begin in June and to be completed over the summer. And then there are projects that were bid this month that will have an action item later on the agenda. First of all, the projects that have been completed: Central Cabarrus High School office modifications for security were complete, with the exception of the upcoming mod. So the basic scope is complete. Concord High School chiller and cooling tower is complete. Northwest Cabarrus High School chiller and cooling tower is complete. Technology projects that were complete: Mount Pleasant Middle School wireless technology is complete. Concord Middle School wireless technology is complete. And J.M. Robinson High School wireless technology is complete. Projects to complete by the time school break for the summer: Concord High School auditorium renovation will be completed by the end of May, and Concord High School dining expansion will be completed first week in June. Projects to begin in May: Central Cabarrus High School window replacement projects will begin at the end of the month. Projects to begin in June and be completed by August school opening: Central Cabarrus High School chiller, cooling tower, and controls replacement. Concord High School controls replacement pending board approval on the selection of the bid. Mount Pleasant Elementary School chiller and controls replacement. Northwest Cabarrus Middle School air conditioning and controls replacement. Northwest Cabarrus High School controls replacement pending board approval on the bid. The technology projects, and this is pending receipt of equipment, which we've had long lead issues with some of the equipment through the Buy American Act. Concord High School wireless technology, Northwest Cabarrus High School wireless technology, Central Cabarrus High School wireless technology, and Northwest Middle School, or Northwest Cabarrus Middle School will be completed over the summer. And that's basically all that I have on my report. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Board members, do you have any questions? Ms. Furtenbaugh?
Liam, looking at the completion dates over here, and like Northwest Cabarrus Middle, switch of servers, wireless wiring, you had just said it would be completed over summer. It's showing like an April completion date, so does this just need updated?
It needs updating.
There's a couple April dates in here that
there are a couple
need
April dates that yeah, you're right. I need to update that. We were hoping to get equipment in, but we're finding that the lead times on some of the equipment has been anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just scanning down for expected dates, and they just weren't syncing up there.
Yeah, I will update that.
So, and then I know under canceled, y'all have moved the Northwest Cabarrus High School practice fields down to canceled, but it's still up in the current as well. So just one or the other needs to go away.
Okay.
So
we're still looking at a public-private with the National Guard, trying to figure that out, but I'll make that.
Yeah, wherever it needs to go. Maybe it needs to stay at the top and says pending. I don't know if it's really grant funding or something, but basically cooperative.
That's
funding.
correct. It should be.
So.
It should probably be canceled because the funding has been transferred.
It's not out of here.
Right.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Some of those things Mr. Conley and I had discussed earlier, and as we noticed that they haven't been corrected, but that'll be no problem. I'm sure get
I will
those
correct.
little changes made there. Thank you, Lee. Done an excellent job for being
Thanks.
here tonight. Thank you so much. All right, board members, let's move over to 4.1, the budget amendments. Keeping in mind these items, budget items, and all the other items down through, I think, 4.09. I believe that's where we're at. These are all items that we will be discussing tonight that will either be on the consent agenda for May the 14th or the action agenda for May the 14th. And so your questions and concerns need to be answered tonight so that whenever it comes time to vote on the 14th, we'll know where we are already. And so with all that being said, Ms. Klutz, the budget amendments, thank you.
Yes, sir. We'll start with our state budget amendment, and on our state, we're just adding additional funds to the budget. So we'll start with our teacher orientation pay, which is just a normal increase that we're expecting this time of year. And then we did receive an additional fuel allotment, $92,000. So we increased our state allotment of $94,000. Do we have any questions on state budget amendments?
Yeah, Mr. I have a question. This says under the gas diesel and first semester early college program.
Actually, we just need to, we didn't change that description. That's a good catch, Ms. Furtenbaugh. We'll adjust our description.
I just thought we were getting fuel
It's
for
not-
the early college
it's not.
differently
It's just
somehow,
a-
and I didn't understand
No,
that.
I'm sorry. We didn't catch our description there. We'll correct that. Thank you. Local budget amendments. The first adjustment is to increase the deferred revenue from actual versus our estimated. What happens is we estimate the amount of carryover we have from one year to the another, and then we can adjust it to actual. I don't usually worry about it that much, but this year they were in need of the funds, and it was an increase. So I did make the adjustment to reflect that, because we just usually there's usually a significant amount of carryover there that it doesn't matter, but they're in need of that, so I thought I would adjust it so that they could see those dollars there for them. So that's what I did. And then the next budget amendment is...
Kelly, I'm sorry, are you still on local?
Yes.
Are you moving?
Yes, no, I'm
off
not
of
moving.
local or?
I'm not moving.
Okay.
The next...
Okay, go ahead.
Good. The next budget amendment is we're moving from Mount Pleasant roof to J.M. Robinson roof. They completed that project, and they were moving the funds from that school to another school. And then same type of projects here. We had paving projects from one school to another paving project. And so now I can entertain questions for local. I think Cindy has some.
We don't have a Cox Mill Middle School.
Does it say Cox Mill Middle?
Not that I know of, anyways.
Under where? Cox
Pond.
Mill. Oh, jeez. Yes. Sorry. You're catching all of our typos today. Sorry.
Is it really for a
Cox-
pond, or is it
Cox-
just a
no.
mistake?
Cox Mill Elementary.
I would assume that's the cess pond, or what they refer to, the
Yeah.
run-up retention
Cox
pond, I
Mill
would
Elementary.
assume.
Was the retention pond, is that, so
Yes,
it really
it's
is a retention pond
It's a
for
retention
Cox
pond.
Mill Elementary? Okay.
Yes. Yes. Cox Mill Elementary. Yes. Oh, okay. Other questions? Okay. Federal funds, basically, we're adjusting from planning allotments to actual, or we're reclassing our federal funds. We have increased our federal allotment $4,306 overall. Okay, questions on federal? And then capital outlay, essentially this is what Mr. Conley was talking about. We're moving several of those projects into the Northwest Cabarrus gym. You can see all of those identified projects, then we're increasing the Northwest Gym project $661,406. The next line, we're taking chiller we're reducing the chiller from Mount Pleasant Elementary and increasing the chiller to Central Cabarrus for $100,000. And then we have some projects at the bottom for Central Cabarrus, and we're just moving those around at Central Cabarrus. And we didn't increase or decrease the capital outlay fund. We just reclassed. Okay. Questions on those?
Ms. Klutz, I have just a question, just something that just came to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to be voting just in a little while. We're not voting, but we're going to be discussing about the bids,
Right.
the May 2nd bids that we had for, I believe it was Concord High and one of the other schools. I can't remember right offhand, but anyway, according to the bid tabulations, they were considerably low under our estimated budget.
Mm-hmm.
Those excess funds, could that be applied back to some of these things here? Or, I mean, you know, if it's somewhere about 200,000, to the best of my memory, some of the other board members may remember, you know, on the bid estimations though, but those funds that we're looking at that are under bid,
Mm-hmm.
Will we be able to use them for some of these things that we're taking out?
Absolutely. I mean, he
Okay.
keeps a running list, and any of these projects that we don't get to do that move out, then they eventually come right back up.
Right, because I know we're making plans now to get the Northwest Gym underway and
Mhm.
all that, so you have to have the funds in place.
Right.
But for the ones that's suffering because of that, I'm hoping that we can get those other funds to apply toward that.
Mhm.
I
They
think
can
probably
circle
the
back.
board probably feels the same way
Yeah.
about that, I'm sure.
Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Woodkey's notes to us were that he wanted to hold for just a little bit to get some more of the bids through. That he did not want to commit those and put something back in and have to take it back out again.
Absolutely,
So,
I
right.
agree. Okay, board members, do we have any questions on the budget amendments? Do I have a nod of the head for consent agenda for next week with the corrections
The
of the
description.
typographical errors? Everybody good for consent? Okay, Ms. Klutz, consent agenda for May 14th on the budget items. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, we're going to move right along now to the Public School Capital Building Fund, which will also be Ms. Klutz, and she's there. And so we're ready to talk about that, Ms. Klutz. Thank you.
This is an application to take public school capital building funds out and use those funds. It's for $42,345.37, and it requires both boards to sign this application to get those funds out. We took 2.4-ish million out back in August 2009 and essentially depleted the fund. It left about $27,000 in the fund, and then it's earned a little bit of interest ever since then. But we feel it necessary to go ahead and deplete that fund completely at this time, just to make sure that the state doesn't see that money there and they don't think that we don't need it. We need every dime that we can get. So in conjunction with the county, we want to go ahead and get these funds and spend them on technology.
Thank you, Ms. Klutz. Board members, do we have any questions? Have questions, we'll entertain those. Otherwise, is it okay for the consent agenda on the 14th? All right, Ms. Klutz, you've got 2 items on consent agenda for the 14th.
Thank you, sir.
All right, board members, we're going to move on to 4.03, the policy revisions. Dr. Colleen Sane, matter of fact, she'll be there for 4.03, 4.04, and 4.05, and I'll just leave you right there. Okay, Dr. Sane.
We have a number of policies ready for first read. I need to go back and adjust this. Okay. We have a number of policies that are ready for first read that came through our policy committee. In those policies are immunization, smoking, and tobacco products, student health services, safety and student transportation services, and a number of policies that regard to drivers, school buses, bus routes, etc. Are there any of these policies that you have questions about?
Okay, board members, you've had time to review the policies and the reason for the revision, whether it be North Carolina School Board policy revision or whether it's a policy revision by the policy committee. So if you have questions about any of these policies, Dr. Sane will address those at this time. Ms. Bonnet, I'll start with you if you have questions.
Curiosity.
Yes, ma'am.
On policy 6306R, the idling procedures.
Right.
What is the rationale between they have to be idling when the students are at the school grounds, but not idling? And I don't understand that.
Okay.
That's a strange situation.
Explain to me where you are, please.
I'm on B2.
Okay.
It says that they, while loading or unloading on the school grounds, they have to be idling. But if they're
Right.
loading or unloading on the school grounds or at school-related activities, the activity buses don't idle. I don't understand why. What's the
Activity buses do not have the stop. They don't have the the stop arm that comes out, the arm walking control.
Okay, so
so
it's
there's
not
no
a-
need to have them
It's
on.
not a carbon dioxide or a gasoline situation.
No,
Okay,
It's just a question of they don't have that
See,
equipment. So
thank you.
Ms. Bonnet, you got your question answered? You good?
Yes.
Okay. Board members, anybody else have any questions? Ms. Furtenbaugh?
Yeah, just probably the same typo, just to check the lettering of the, the two A, B, C, D stuff. Like
Okay.
6306 has.
I sure will.
Okay, Ms. Blackwell?
Mine was just that 4110 states the Board of Education, and we've decided that we
It's the
always we're
board.
going to use the board.
Okay, got it.
Ms. Kiger, you want to ask your question? No, I'm fine, thank you. Okay, board members, you have these on the first reading. Do I have a nod of the head for consent agenda on the 14th? Okay, Dr. Singh, consent agenda for these policies. Okay, 4.04, policies on a second reading.
These are the policies that you have previously reviewed. There was one policy that you had a question about, which was school administrator contracts. Pull that one up, 7425. And there was one particular paragraph that you had a question about, which was initial contracts between that particular paragraph. And I wanted to make sure that it said what you had asked me to say and that it was clearer.
Board members, do you have that particular policy?
Yeah, if we could just have a moment, because that wasn't highlighted and read as a change.
I realize that. I'm sorry.
I think that addresses what we were asking, I believe, but Ms. Furtenbaugh, I think you're the one that raised that question, I believe, initially. Does it meet what you were wanting it to say?
Yes, I like the chronological order. That makes much more sense now. But it says 4-year, okay, the word initial contracts will be granted only to exemplary. So what if we have a new administrator to our district who maybe was an AP for a year somewhere else? Do they fall under the 2-year will be granted for individuals who do not have experience? And then there's almost like a gap there.
I think, what we're talking about here, and Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2-year contracts would be for any AP who's coming into the new principalship. The second one, the 4-year initial contract, if we, for example, were to go to another county and their best of all times principal wanted to leave that county and come to us, and we had a special need, that would be one thing we could put in as part of the package that, we can't offer them the extra $10,000 worth of pay, but that would be one thing if we knew they were outstanding. That would be highly unusual.
And that's fine. I'm just thinking about that situation, Mark. Do you see where there's that gap kind of, where there's a person it does not fall under the who do not have experience category, but they're also not an exemplary. So we want to do a 2-year, and let's say we have, a high school API coming from Charmeck, and they're coming to our district after a year. So we're not open yet to do the 4-year because they're not exemplary. But can we use that 2-year clause because it specifically states who do not have experience?
I mean, I think your choices are 2 and 4. We're saying if you're no experience, you're automatically 2, and that the only time we're going to use 4 is for exemplary. But the exemplary isn't, defined. It gives us some flexibility to say who exemplary is. But I think everyone will be 2-year unless it's exemplary experience. But that may be, we haven't said how many years that is to be an exemplary school administrator. But I think the goal was to give us the discretion to say where we need to do it to get an exceptional administrator, we may consider an initial 4-year, but the default is 2 for everybody.
I'm trying to think how we can improve that sentence there. Trying to think, 2-year initial contracts will be granted for individuals who do not have experience as school administrators.
Okay, so that's
Or
the
are-
only option for folks who do not have experience.
Right, but
Right.
I don't want to say or are not exemplary, I'm trying to think of a nice way to put
Right,
that.
right. We could begin that next sentence with, in extraordinary circumstances, 4-year contracts will be granted to school administrators who are deemed exemplary.
Yeah, but wait, like I said, I just want to cover that case where we have someone who has experience, but they're still going to get a 2-year. They can't even argue about the 4-year because the 2 years is the default.
Right,
We're not
okay, I
saying
see
the
what
2
you're
years is the
saying.
default.
Then probably what we need to say is something that that initial contracts in Cabarrus County for administration are typically 2-year contracts, including those who do have experience and those who do not.
Very good.
Thank you.
I like that.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Furtenbaugh, that got you fixed up. Everybody happy with that now? All right, do I have nodded the head for consent agenda on these policies for second reading? Okay, good to go for that, Dr. Sane. So now we're going to talk about 4.05, the pictures and
Yes.
the bids.
We opened the bidding process on March 27th. We invited, you can see the list of companies, Photo Memories, Metro Portraits, Life Touch, Crider Photography, and Carolina Photography, which were all of the photography companies that we could find in our area. Bids were due on Monday, April the 16th. We opened them at 10 o'clock. We only had one visitor at that time who was Photo Memories. You'll see on the sheet that there were 2 who had fairly similar prices. Let me get this up to where people can see it. There is a difference. There were a couple things that we took into consideration. One, this is a major fundraiser for schools. Elementary schools really don't have any other way to raise funds for their general fund, which that becomes really important. The other part of this is that Metro Portraits did not offer us a retail price for their photo book, for the memory books. And then when we looked at Photo Memories was a local company, we decided to recommend Photo Memories.
Thank you, Dr. Sane. All right, board members, on the picture bid tabulation sheet, do you have questions, concerns? Start off with Mr. Furr.
Well, I have no concerns, but I know that these guys are local, and they've done a fantastic job for us in the past, and I've always done everything we've asked them to do.
Thank you, Mr. Furr. Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh.
Mr. Chair, I'll be honest, I was personally pleased with Photo Memories. Anytime parents have called complaining, I've said, well, gosh, just try to work through that because they've been a great company to work with. Have had a couple complaints recently.
Okay.
And so I think we need to, before the next meeting, Mr. Chair, as a predecessor, I'd like to have this on action. I'd like for you, Dr. Sane, to talk to Photo Memories Management and just see how they are handling their customer service. It may be that with our size of our district has grown, if they've not increased staff proportionately, they may not be able to be as responsive as we expect them to be. In order for us to be loyal to them, we need for them to continue their same level of service. And then the second comment is this Life Touch company, even though they were non-responsive, they are coming into our schools and selling pictures through PTAs and whatnot.
PTAs, okay.
And so I'm a little concerned that we have maybe competing student picture.
Yeah, do they come in and do the group pictures?
No, they're
No.
doing individual pictures, sending them home.
Oh.
Parents get to look at them. They're like little poses, the hand on the chin stuff. So, Jason, you're familiar with that? Or you've seen them?
I haven't seen them in our school, but I know.
Okay. But I don't know how many schools they're in, but I'm a little concerned that we contract and we basically commit business for individual portraits. And then a company who chooses not even to bid with us is coming in as a fundraiser through an alternate means and selling pictures in combination or in
And
competition.
that's competition to what we're doing.
So if parents think, I have the student pictures taken, I don't know when they take them in the fall or something, the individuals, and then they're doing it a second time, at some point they're going to say, well, I'm going to wait for those other ones. So I just want us to be focused and consistent. And if we're awarding a contract, then we're awarding a contract. We're not having other people who don't even choose to bid come in. So,
Okay, thank you for that
Absolutely.
information.
Dr. Shepherd, and you'll look into that, get
Absolutely.
get the clarity on that for us. And as Ms. Furtenbaugh said, I would suggest we put it on the action agenda for that.
Okay.
And also the other things. But Ms. Blackwater, you have some comments, questions?
Yeah, actually, I was curious, how do we advertise for this to be bid out? How do companies know that they're able to
We
bid in that way?
contacted, actually, to be honest, we went through the internet and found all the photo companies within our area, and we went through the phone book and found there weren't any others in the phone book that we didn't know. And we sent them letters inviting them to bid, letters with the specs on what we needed.
So the tagline for Carolina's photography is saying that it was late. Is that what they're saying?
Yes, ma'am. We went ahead and put it on here because we're not certain that the tardiness of that was due to the company's fault. It was delivered into Len Whitkey's office. They didn't realize it was a time-sensitive delivery, so they delivered it in the afternoon like they always do. When we went back and researched it, it had come in at the regular time, so we felt honor-bound to at least open it.
Were they made aware of that? Were they made aware of that?
No.
That their bid was?
No.
Okay.
What I will do is, as when we're finished, when we make our final decision, then what we'll do is I'll send them a letter stating that event.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwater. Mr. Kiger?
Thanks. The tab on the right, 3-year option says yes. Are you recommending the 3-year option? Or is that just something that was
That's
part of
something
the
they're
bid?
willing to do. To me, it makes sense to do a 3-year option. This was the first time I've done closed bids. So, if I can do that, I would love to.
Absolutely on that. Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Minot, you have questions? Okay, board members, you have it. Looks like they want to recommend that it's Photo Memories is who we're looking at. But we want to move this to the action agenda for the 14th, and so we'll be a little more further discussion at that time. So Dr. Sane will be going to the action agenda.
That'll be great. Thank you.
All right, board members, we're going to move on now to 4.06, and Dr. Sane will be there for this also, along with Kelly Klutz.
We have some support from Kelly, and Robert Klutz is also here tonight
Okay.
in case you have questions. The General Assembly at the end of last year cut driver's education 25%. They didn't cut driver's education, they just cut the funds used to support that. In doing that, they said, okay, but you can charge up to no more than $45 per course. We had students who had already registered for the summer courses, and we didn't feel like we could go back and suddenly say, oh, wait a minute, we were just kidding, we need $45 from you in order to do this. So we didn't. So we started the year with a deficit. We have been able to collect approximately $45,000 in funds, but it still leaves us with a deficit. And the deficit does not include purchasing any new vehicles to replace old vehicles with high mileage. Primarily, our funding goes towards salary. We reviewed the areas surrounding us, and what we found is that while we're typically under every other county, in this case, we were way over what other counties were charging. Other counties had already gone to a flat rate. We were paying our driver's education teachers according to their certification, years of experience, and so that has made it go up quite a bit. What we are proposing is that in order to stay within our budget, that DPI certified rate, teachers who are DPI certified, but certified, DPI certified, in other words, they hold a license to teach, plus they have driver's ed, $25 an hour to do that work. And if you only hold the DMV certified, we would pay $20 an hour. I can tell you, as a parent of a daughter who's teaching driver's ed as a second income to supplement her teaching, hers has gone down to $13 an hour in Raleigh, and I think that that's kind of a sign of the times. We have to stay within our budget, and this was the only way we could think of to do it. Questions?
Okay, board members, Mr. Farrell, we'll start with you. You have any questions concerning this issue here? Okay, Ms. Furtenbaugh.
I'd just like to know very simply, and you can just email it to us or something.
Okay.
How many hours do we pay at each rate? So really, what does that net out to be?
Okay.
So I don't know how many we have that are one way or the other.
Okay, I can send that to you.
Ms. Blackwelder. Mr. Kiger.
You mentioned the status of, this doesn't have anything to do with older cars and high mileage, whatever. I'd like it, again, maybe just for information purposes only, kind of where we stand with that.
Okay.
Because I would imagine it's coming down the road, pardon the phrase, but,
There's Robert.
and you can
Yeah.
send it to us. That
I
don't
think
need
it's
to know,
been
I
at
just
least
said
2 years since we put any new cars into the fleet. Yes, sir. And we don't buy new cars. We buy what we can afford that are safe.
Okay, Ms. Minot, you have questions?
Don't buy new cars.
No, I don't have any questions. I was going to say, why are you buying new cars? Have you ever thought of speaking to the auto dealers and telling them what your needs are coming up so that they can be looking for good opportunities for the school system? Because they can do that, and perhaps get you if they knew what your budgets were.
When we had funds, that's what we did, and that was wonderful. They worked with us, but right now we don't have enough funds to make payroll. So that was a wonderful suggestion when we had enough funds beyond payroll. Yes, ma'am.
And we'll do it again.
And we will do it again.
Do it again.
Okay, board members, thank you for all your questions. What's your pleasure on this? You want to move to the action agenda for these, to the answers that we have asked, for the questions we've asked?
I'm okay with consent. Mine was just mere out of curiosity.
I just wanted the background.
Okay, so everybody good with consent then? We're okay on consent? Okay, Dr. Singh, we'll go to the consent agenda on the driver's ed pay scale.
All right, thank you
All right,
very much.
good show. Thank you for your reports there, Dr. Singh. All right, now we're going to move on to 4.07, board members, to the lunch price increase for 2012-13. I'd like to ask Dr. Probst and Ms. Tina Farmer. Good to have you both with us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. At this time, we'd like to talk to you about proposing a 5-cent increase in the child nutrition program. And prior to doing that, we'd like to tell you why it is necessary for Cabarrus County Schools to move forward with increasing our prices. In December of 2010, Congress passed the Healthy Hunger Free Act. And in this act, for the first time in 30 years, they set a reform that said we are going to mandate exactly what our children eat in the school cafeterias nationwide. The First Lady and the USDA announced this regulation on January 25th. which doesn't give school systems a lot of time to prepare. But I will tell you that luckily, with Tina Farmer's guidance over the last several years, Cabarrus County Schools is in good position to be ready for next year. The USDA estimates that the new meal pattern will cost $3.2 billion over the next 5 years. And any of you who try to eat healthy and shop on the outside of the grocery store aisles will know that the cost of fruit and vegetables and your meats and your produce and dairy is a lot more expensive than the prepackaged foods in the inner aisles. Inside this, for our offerings in our cafeterias, will be increased fruit servings at breakfast and lunch, and students will be required this next year to have an extra fruit or vegetable at the lunch. We will have to increase the whole grains that we offer, lower our sodium levels in the next 5 years. Trans fat and saturated fats have to be limited. We have to have fat-free flavored milk only in the cafeteria. Calorie maximums and minimums, and all of this has to take place in the next 5 years. We're excited about these changes, and Ms. Farmer is going to talk to you about how we plan on doing this.
Good evening. A couple of the things that will have to change over the next 5 years, one of them would be meal identification. We will have to figure out a way to identify what a reimbursable meal is to the child before they get to the end of the lunch line and before they choose their meal. So either through pictures or some type of information that we would give them before they get in the lunchroom. We're currently working with a couple of schools to test out different ways to do that. Another thing that changed is before we would group our vegetables and our fruit together as one component. For the first time, vegetables will be separate from fruit, and we will have subgroups that we will have to meet, and that will be dark green, red, orange, beans, peas, starchy, and other vegetables. So anything that doesn't meet everything else will be other. Meal components, the grains. As Dr. Probst said, we will have to have all whole grains coming up in the 2014-15 school year. For the next school year, we'll have to have 50% of our grains as whole. We are already at about 80 or 90% of our grains as whole. Our students in Cabarrus County do not like whole grain pizza. We have looked over the last few years trying to find a whole grain pizza that would be acceptable to them, and we have not found one, so we are still using a regular school pizza. And also our macaroni and cheese. I don't know if you know, but it is homemade, and we haven't found a whole grain pasta macaroni that the students would accept. We are using a whole grain spaghetti noodles, which has gone over really well.
I like the fact that it says 2 grain desserts, whole grain desserts. I said to Tina, I said, I guess you put frosting on it, and she just looked at me and went, no, whole grain.
Fluid milk, we will have to have fat-free flavored milk. We've already met that requirement beginning this school year. We do offer strawberry and chocolate fat-free milk, and then our regular milk is low-fat. For the reimbursable meal, we mentioned before that beginning next school year, students will have to take a fruit or a vegetable with their lunch. Currently, a student can come through the line and take 3 of the 5 components. So if a child wanted a chicken sandwich, which is the bread and the meat component, and a milk, right now that's considered a full reimbursable meal. Next year, that will not. They will have to take a fruit or a vegetable. We don't think this will be an issue at the elementary level because most elementary students do take a fruit or a vegetable right now. We anticipate the issues being in middle school and high school. So now to the price increase. A component of the Healthy Hunger Free Act that was passed by Congress was the paid meal equity provision. And in that provision, USDA sent us a paid meal equity calculator. And with that calculator, we had to estimate our weighted average meal cost, which for Cabarrus County is currently at $2.46. For next school year, our weighted average meal cost requirement is $2.51, which leaves us with the minimum 5-cent increase. And this is a copy of the meal pricing calculator that we received from USDA. And on the left, you'll see that we had to use our October 2011 meal data. And we had 60,000 meals at the elementary cost of $2.15, 34,000 meals at the middle school and high school level of $2.25, and then 49,000 meals at $3, and that's in our secondary schools, and that's for our premium chicken and pizza items and also our healthy cart items, which are our freshly made wraps and salads at $3. So some of the meal prices in our surrounding counties, with this increase, we would be at $2.20 for elementary school, and secondary we would be at $2.30. On the chart, you can see we wouldn't be the highest and we wouldn't be the lowest. We would be somewhere in the middle. And I had a note at the bottom that generally counties with a lower meal price, they have a higher free and reduced cost, which helps offset those costs because they receive a higher rate of federal reimbursement on those meals. So if the increase is not approved, we ran the numbers for our meals served last year, and if we had to give each of our students an additional fruit or vegetable, it would have resulted in a loss of $182,000. Also, if we do not get the 5 cents approved, we would not be compliant with the federal mandate, and DPI has stated that it would result in corrective action and could result in loss of federal funding. And just to note that we have ended the year financially sound for the past 3 years, and we have not had an increase since, I think it was 2004, my first year. Yay, Tina. Any questions?
I do think it's important to note that many of the surrounding counties are increasing by 10%, 10 cents. They decided that since they're going to have to put a fruit in next year's breakfast, to go ahead, or the following year's breakfast, to instead of coming to their boards one time or each year, to just go ahead and do the 10 cents and it'll cover them for 2 years. In speaking with Dr. Shepard and Ms. Farmer, we decided that based on the economy to stay with the 5 cents and then come back to you if needed be next spring.
Thank you very much, Ms. Farmer and Dr. Probst, for your report there. And Board, I'd like to ask you if you have any questions at this time about this increase. And before you do that, I want to say that I did go out to A.T. Allen last Friday, and I had lunch with my little grandson, and I had the pizza. And I it wasn't half bad, really, I mean, it really wasn't half bad.
There's a ringing endorsement.
And my grandson, I said, aren't you going to eat that pizza? Well, you can go with it from there. But I thought it was very good, and so, but anyway, board members, Ms. Minot, you have any questions you want to ask Dr. Probst, Ms. Farmer?
It's been a while since I've talked about school lunches. The federal government reimburses us the entire cost of the free lunch, correct? Or is it $2.46? What, for the children that are getting free lunch, what do we get from the federal government per child?
I'd have to look at my notes, but I believe it is $2.71 that we received.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We get just a tad bit higher reimbursement from the federal government on the free lunch than we do for our own. I don't know what the justification for that is, but I do know and I think you're right, Ms. Farmer. I think it is $2.70.
I was just having a little bit of trouble understanding what a weighted average meal cost is.
Oh, okay. That weighted average meal cost is the average of the $2.15 meals for elementary, $2.25 for secondary, and the $3 premium meal. So it's a weighted average of those three.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minot. Mr. Kiger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I understand the reasons for why we're doing what we're doing, and that makes perfect sense. If our costs are going up, we've got to pass that along. And the one point I guess I would like to make is your last slide there, if the increase is not approved, I don't know if it's the last slide, but that middle line, philosophically speaking, boy, that is really a problem. And I'm not going to go into anything other than that, but when DC is telling everybody everywhere what to eat and how to do it and where to go, but they're dangling funds in front of you and telling you if you don't follow us, we may not take this, that's just a real problem. That, again, that's just philosophically speaking.
Chair, may I
Yes,
add a
Ms.
comment
Bonnet, yes.
to what he just said? Because that's really where I was going with my comment. This is a hidden tax. And it's a hidden tax on the people who can afford to pay for the meals. And it's being passed on to the children who can't afford, which is fine. I want those children fed.
Yeah.
But if they're going to tell us what we have to feed them and you have to hand them an apple that's going to be tossed, I personally resent having to raise the prices to pay for it.
Thank you, Ms. Bonnet. Ms. Blackwelder.
I actually have a couple of questions, and my first year on the board was 2004 as well, but I was thinking we have had an increase since then. Maybe it was breakfast or something else.
Just since she's been in charge.
No, I've just.
It would have been during my time, so I'm just thinking whatever. Stand by. My question is, whenever the reason I'm thinking about this is because I remember asking the question, what were we doing and how were we identifying students that may be embarrassed or we weren't getting the paperwork to them that would qualify. And and I know we had this conversation because that's when the actually really bad parts of the recession had kind of entered in and we were beginning to feel the pain of that. And we said that maybe parents would be more apt to fill that application out now than previous times. We've never received a report regarding that. So have we done anything, taken any extra measures to make sure that we're identifying those and that maybe they would be a little more open about applying?
Actually, under Tina's leadership, you want to tell them what you've been doing for the last 2 years regarding the applications?
With the free and reduced applications, 2 years ago, we began mailing the applications home to parents in a self-addressed envelope, and we would put the child's information on there along with their school information, and the parent sends it back directly to our office in a confidential envelope. Before, we were sending an application home with every single child, and they would send it to their teacher, it'd get lost in the backpack, and it just wasn't a good system. A lot of parents didn't feel it was very confidential. With this system, we've had a lot of calls. I've talked to a lot of parents that feel it's a lot more secure, and they feel a lot more secure in filling out the application.
I just want to make sure we're doing things because we know that more people are out of work now than ever before, and that maybe where there was a two working, mom and dad both working now, maybe just one. So I just want to make sure we were really on top of that. My other question is, and this is probably very silly, but I'm just curious, who polices if they don't get the reimbursable meal, and do we turn ourselves in, or what happens if they get at the end of the line and they don't have a reimbursable meal? I don't understand how we either make the grade or we don't, with children having the option.
Yeah. It's the same thing right now. They have certain components that they have to take to make a reimbursable meal. This is just an additional component that they would have to take. So right now, if a child doesn't have a milk or doesn't have enough, the cashier will ask them if they would like something else from the line to make it a complete meal.
I guess my reason for asking that is a lot of time for them to go through those lines, and everybody's having to make sure that they're right. That's number one. They don't have that much time anyway. So how are we, as the cafeteria workers or the teachers, how are we expediting that? We know that's going to be a complete stall, that they have to count what's on the plate, identify it, make sure it meets the criteria. That just seems like to me that would really lengthen the process. Are we addressing that part of it?
Yes, that was part of the mandate, is that we have to identify at the beginning of the line what a reimbursable meal is, and we're working with a couple schools on that as well. And we also have a big training that we're planning to do for the beginning of the school year for our cashiers and our managers.
Ms. Blackwelder, thank you for your comments. Before you go, Mrs. Furtenby, I wanted to mention that when I was out at A.T. Allen, I don't know if that's one of the pilot schools or not, and I don't know if it was just because I was there or not. I don't know. But anyway, I heard the cashier ask a couple of times the student, would you like to get something else, this versus this? And so there was a question. They did ask that, and his lunchtime was from 11:45 to 12:15. They didn't get there until 5 minutes till 12, but they were still out at 12:15. So it worked real good as far as the time element, the questions asked, and all that. I thought it was really very smooth.
I guess my question is, what if they didn't? If they give them the option, what if they don't choose it? What if they say no and they don't meet that obligation for them to have it? That's my question, taking it a little further than that. What
They
happens?
would be charged a la carte. So each individual component would be charged instead of being charged as a reimbursable meal. And that really comes into play with our children that are free or reduced. Then that would become a charge on their account. So we really would like for them to have a reimbursable meal.
I know I'm making this painful, but my real question is, do we lose the reimbursement for it? And there's no way we
Yes.
can fix that if they
Right.
opt out of,
Exactly.
so to speak. We lose the total reimbursement for that if
Yes.
they choose not to do it.
Yes.
How do we address that? I mean, there's going to be a lot of that to take place because they're not, number one, used to doing it. How are you going to, I mean, I see how you're training the staff and those, but how are we educating the children that they need to be a part of that process? That, to me, we're going to be even in more problems with the reimbursement of if we lose the reimbursement due to that new law.
Well, the meal identification at the beginning of the line, letting the students know, and working with our teachers as well so that they understand, and just making sure that everybody understands what they need to do for next year with the fruit and vegetable. We've also started this year having a fruit bowl at the end of the line, and we'll ask a student, would you like a fruit with that? So that will kind of help alleviate that as well, since it is the fruit that they have to take.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwater. Ms. Furtenbaugh.
I was just going to comment on the increase. Tina, we have had an increase since you've been employed, maybe not since you've been director, but since you've been here, because we've not gone 8 years without an increase.
It was 2008 when I became director. That was the last
Yeah, you made a
increase.
comment about 2004.
Oh,
We
okay.
We
Okay.
haven't had an increase since then.
Yeah, 2008.
That's we're not crazy.
Yeah, yes.
No, we have had
4 years ago.
Yeah. And I just want to comment, Grace, for clarification, when you made the reference about the hidden tax, that to the point where the people who pay for a standard lunch actually pay less than the full expense of creating that lunch, right? Because the free and reduced balances out to cover the gap. Is that right?
Say that one more time.
If a person pays $2.15 right now for their lunch, they're a paying person.
Yes.
That lunch actually costs us more than $2.15 to create, right?
Yes.
So they're getting more than $2.15 of value because we combine it all together with the free and reduced lunch money we get in other. It's more, it balances for the people who have to pay outright. So yes, it is probably a little excess, but it's paying for those extra selections and the fruits and vegetables and grains and all those things that we need. So, yeah, so.
That's my whole point. If we lose those reimbursables, which are kind of carrying
Yeah.
the load, that's going to, I'm sorry.
It's probably.
It's the training piece, I think, Ms. Blackwater, that has to happen, not only with the staff that's primary, but with the students. And Ms. Farmer's staff, they do fruit and vegetable shows throughout the year. They're trying to showcase this for the students. But the marketing piece, when those students come through and they see the pictures and they understand they have to take one from this pile, one from that, they'll get it.
Well, and I think also, not to pick on you tonight, Mrs. Patterson, but I think the teachers, you guys reinforce in the classroom as well through different lessons and whatnot about selections.
I've been dying to say something. We make sure that they get what they're supposed to on the kindergarten level. We're trained explicitly on what a plate needs to look like for it to be fully reimbursable, and I hover the whole way down to make sure they have. And if I'm sidetracked and they get to the cash register, our lady will say, you have to have this or this. So I give them a 10-second count to get it and get back, and it's almost, so they have what they need always. We don't let them through the line without that. I am kindergarten, though. I'm not sure if everybody does that. And the second thing I wanted to say is that they have at my school, they have really great pictures. So this is what your tray needs to look like match the tray. You need to have, and they even put them in the same spots so the visual really helps. that a lot. And I also wanted to say thank you so much for mailing those. The workload you took off teachers is huge. So I really need to personally thank you. That has been such a wonderful thing for our school, not having to worry about those free and reduced lunch forms. So thank you so much for that. But the teachers are trained at the beginning of the year on what a reimbursable lunch looks like.
Less painful to begin with. That's where
I have one more question. Tina, when new students come into school, maybe transfers in, do you keep up with those as far as, like, you get a list so that those parents are mailed a form? Because I would think especially there may be a high percentage of free and reduced lunch around families who are transient mid-year. So.
Yes, any new student that comes in their packet, we don't mail it to their home, but in their packet they will get the free and reduced application, and it will have the self-addressed envelope in it that they will send to us.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Mr. Furr, you have comments, questions?
Yeah, what's for lunch? No, I'm just thankful I got board members like Ms. Minot and Mr. Kiger there that are a lot more tactful in the way they say things. I was thinking on how I was going to say what you guys said, but I wasn't going to use the same words. So you guys bailed me out, and I appreciate it. But the increase is, we have no choice in that matter. But it's a shame that we had to discuss this for 20 minutes because never mind, that's enough.
Well, we got to keep the kids healthy, and
Mr.
everybody
Chair.
in America knows that obesity is a big problem, and
Yes.
Juvenile diabetes is a big problem, and everyone knows that. And so I thank the Department of Agriculture and all those that's involved in trying to protect our kids, Ms. Farmer, for being on top of this. And unfortunately, whenever things go up, we can't absorb that. It has to be passed on, and so that's what we're having to do. It's not something that we want to do, but it's something that we have to do simply because of the requirements that they're putting on us. So, okay, board members, we're down
Mr.
to...
Chair, I just have one other
yes, Ms.
question
Mott.
that I'd like to ask you as the teacher. What do you see as the waste volume, food that's taken and not eaten, and do the children improve through the year in what they take from September to May? Are they learning anything from this? Or are they acting on what they learn, or are we just throwing food away?
Well, it matters what's for lunch. On pizza day, there's no waste ever. Also, they have to get food in kindergarten. So so sometimes if they're not hungry or they're tired, they won't eat, but they always drink their milk, I can say. But I would say that most kids do eat at my school, but sometimes their vegetables go in the trash can, but I think that's just part of being 5 and 6. I wouldn't say it's a huge waste, but they do eat more throughout the year, definitely, because they...
Thank you, Ms. Minot and Ms. Patterson. And I had a comment to add to Ms. Minot's there, and we need to move on. And Dr. Shepard wants to speak also before we move on to the how we're going to move on this. But it seems to me like with all the starving people in the world, that there ought to be a way that the kids that get a dessert, for example, like I had a brownie, it was wrapped in cellophane. Well, I guess if you get it, you got it because you want to eat it. But for a fruit or a vegetable, if you did not want it, but you had to take it simply because it's a guideline, what would happen to the apples and the oranges and the other type fruits that we require them to take if they just throw them away? Now, it seems to me like there ought to be a way, if we have to cellophane wrap them, and then if a kid gets it because he has to and he don't want it, it don't go in the trash can. It could be used for something else. I don't know, but I don't know what the guidelines are on that. I would imagine it's like it is everywhere else. If you get it, it's yours, and you do what you want to with it. And if they give it back to you, you got to throw it away anyway, which is bad. But you can maybe tell me about that just for a minute, and then Dr. Shepard wants to talk.
It's with the our health department. We have talked about that, and we've started thinking about it next year with the anticipated increased waste. And like you said, once the child does take it and it's on their tray, it is in their possession, so we cannot use it in the cafeteria. Once they get into the serving area and they're sitting down in the cafeteria, if they want to share, then of course the child can do that. But we can't have any type of formal policy or procedure in place to where we take back food and use that. That would be against our health department rules and regulations.
It's an interesting topic. It's one that comes up every year, and we've met with our principals, and we'll be encouraging the students, if they have an extra apple or banana and they want to take it back and put it in their book bag and take it home, that we'll be encouraging that as opposed to throwing it in the trash can.
That's excellent. Dr. Shepard, you had a comment.
I just want to say, Ms. Farmer, as your, we all know that, and the board is aware that your family is relocating to Atlanta, and I just want to say how much we appreciate the outstanding work you've done in leading our child nutrition program for the last 4 years. You've provided tremendous leadership. We're going to miss you. We wish you the best, and I know that that you've made your mark on our system, and that long after you're gone, the excellence that you've expected from your employees will continue. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, now we just need to decide, is everybody okay by the nod of the head? Are we good for consent agenda on the 14th? Everybody good? Okay, so Dr. Probst, you have your consent agenda for the 14th on the lunch price increase. Okay, board members, at this time we need to take about a 15, 20-second delay while our cameramen change the disc